If you look at, the fire safety or the issues related with the fire safety in India, of course, we have the IS body, which regulates the safety standards, which is constantly also taking the inputs from the expert and also upgrading those standards in terms of ensuring it that, we take appropriate measures towards, the fire safety of the ACP panels. So I can see that, in last couple of years, a lot of work had been done towards that. And I can see that given the consumption of ACP in the Indian market, I think testing plays a very important role. And I can see that, with BIS and with Indian standards, I think we should be able to cope up, the stringent requirements or the safety norms which are actually needed for this particular industry. Well, third party testing, if you see, it's actually a very, very important component because it actually ensures there is a proper safety check of the ACPs, which are basically, when they actually go in the application. Often, like the third party checks, I would say is that, that is actually a real test because you do the random sampling into that. And then, you don't look at from where the sample actually had come. So it is like without any brand or anything. And you basically do a blind test. So that is something that is very, very important to ensure the proper safety of these ACP panels when they go in the application, and also to ensure that, the buildings or the structures are basically safe. So I would say that the third party testing is very, very important. It ensures the proper safety of, the structures which are in place. So if you look at LDPE, it's basically, this core, this LDPE core can have the organic component in it. It can have also some inorganic component in it. Organic means basically, the hydrocarbons, which are nothing but, like fuel. So they are going to be, I would say that, a big catalyst in terms of, the fire or the fire propagation. So, having more inorganic content in your, core would ensure to some extent the fire safety. So I think, and then if you look at, the melting temperature, when you talk about, the organic core containing LDP is only 100 to 110 degrees centigrade. So, as soon as the temperature reaches to that, it start, melting it, and then it becomes, highly prone to, the fire propagation. However, when you have an inorganic component into it, it can raise that temperature. It can actually double that temperature, let's say from 100 to 200 degree or so. So it ensures to some extent the fire safety. So having an inorganic component in LDP is actually very, very important. When we talk about, the type of paint coat that goes over, the top surface of the ACP, it is actually very, very important because that is the surface which is going to be exposed to the harsh weather conditions. So it is very, very important to have an appropriate coat over the surface. Let's say that if the coat is made of polyester, then I think it is going to be highly prone towards, acute weather, or, if the external weather is harsh, then it can actually peel off the coating quite easy. However, when you have, let's say a PVDF coat over the surface, then it can actually ensure a better life under, the harsh weather condition. So it is very, very important to have an appropriate type of paint coat over the ACP surface to protect it from, the weathering conditions. The thickness of the aluminium that goes over that, the ACP, that is actually very, very important. Now you can get these ACPs in, like having different coil thicknesses. Now it becomes very important when you talk about, the situation or the conditions, such as, for example, when you have a very windy situation or when you have very high wind load, under those situations, you might have the problem of buckling, or, not enough stiffness, or, if you have some kind of an impact loading condition. So then, your coil will not be able to sustain that kind of load if it is not sufficiently thick enough. So it is very, very important to have an appropriate thickness of the coil in the ACP. So I would say that it is very, very important. Anonymous testing is actually very, very important, because we should not just be going by the branch. We should basically have the random sampling without looking at the branch. We should do a thorough investigation of the ACP, because the safety checks are very, very important. And if we ensure that the results of anonymous testing are good, so that means it also gives the confidence in terms of the material which we are putting it, and it basically ensures the safety. So I think it is very, very important to have the anonymous testing without looking at the prompts. That is actually very, very important. It is actually important in building the confidence. So that's why I say that it is very, very important.